Tired of paying subscription for Adobe products? Photoshop has an extraordinary power that is often also exaggerated for the task you have to perform. But the subscription to Adobe must be paid every month and is expensive. In this tutorial, I'm talking about Photopea, an alternative to Photoshop, which is completely free and completely legal, despite being practically a clone of the Adobe program. After the bumper. Hi, I'm Mariano from videozappo.com. This channel is about photography and video. You'll find tests, guides and tutorials just like today's one. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel using the red button below and press the bell to activate all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. For all the links to the products and resources I'm talking about in this video, as usual, take a look at the description below, where you can also find the link to my shop on Amazon. There are so many products all commented that I have personally tried. You can buy without disappointment. It doesn't cost you a single cent more, but help my channel to continue creating free content just like what you are watching. If you remember, in my review of the lens ball, the glass ball, I promised you a tutorial to turn the image inside the sphere, obviously without turning the whole photo. And I also promised you that we would do it with free tools. Well, that tutorial is exactly this one. That gives us the opportunity to talk about a software that I've been asked to review several times here on the channel, that actually deserves some attention. This software is called Photopea. It's written Photopea with PH. And it's a Photoshop clone that runs inside a browser window. To access this software, you just have to write the address in a browser and go to the corresponding page. I'm using Google Chrome. I advise you to set it to full screen because in this way you will obviously have more space available, and above all, the keyboard shortcuts will not be intercepted by the browser. Just a couple of things before starting. You will notice this red button with written account. It serves first of all to signing in. According to the site, it is used to synchronize the information and settings of Photopea between one device and another. I tried, and the only thing I would have liked to save that are some actions that I had recorded. In reality, they were neither transferred nor saved on the local computer. Probably something that will have to be fixed. What about the premium version? You will notice that there is a difference in the steps in the story. So with the free version, it can go back 30 steps. Instead, with the paid version, 60 steps. But the important thing is that the advertising is removed. That is what you see here on the right. Beyond the fact that it may be annoying, it certainly takes up a lot of space. So you decide if this is worth the cost. Note how the only reasonable offer is this for 90 days, because the one for a month costs $1 less. So maybe it's not worth it, and above all, the annual one costs exactly 4 times the one for 3 months, so there is practically no savings. We will use the free version and without logging in. How compatible is Photopea with Photoshop files? I was impressed because even though Photopea is not a perfect Photoshop clone, the compatibility is truly breathtaking. I'll show you the icon I made for my video on how to do a virtual tour, a video that I suggest you watch. It's relisted in the description below and in the card above my head. It can also become a side activity, but we digress. In this icon, I'll show you that we have a filter, which is the raw camera filter, which is still correctly reproduced and correctly represented. although it's not available in Photopea. In fact, as you see, if I go here on the filters, there is no camera raw filter. The smart object, the background of this image, is perfectly editable. You see that all the levels are produced without any problem, and moreover, see, if I decide to remove details, with the Delete Details tool, I want to remove this thing that bothered me, I did it. I save the smart object with Ctrl S. I close it and here it is. You see, that detail that bothered us has disappeared. Same thing, for example, you see, this is the Tourmake logo. This is also a smart object, so Ctrl T on the keyboard and you see I can transform it exactly as I would in Photoshop and it is perfectly represented. Same thing for the character with its effects. It's not a very complex Photoshop file, but you saw how quickly it opened it, and in any case it rendered it perfectly. Now no more talk, let's start taking care of our photo. But first put a nice like on this video and follow me on Instagram, because at least 3 times a week I post a photo and tell you the story that led to the realization of that shot. You can find me as a video at Zappo as well as on all other social networks. From the Photopea home screen, we have the possibility of creating a new project, and in this case we have a rather vast series of templates and predefined sizes suitable for most social networks. See the Instagram story, the Twitter profile, and, in short, a whole series of possibilities, certainly very comfortable. It is not what we are going to do. In fact, we will open a photo from the computer. I'll show you what our point of arrival is. What you saw in the video on the lens ball, on the glass ball. I point out that I made this external part using the Nik collection filters. Photopea is not plug-in compatible. And as a result, we should find an alternative to this. So let's go and open our starting image. You saw that I used Ctrl O exactly as I could have done in Photoshop. This is the original DNG, and here you have the first nasty surprise. These are the raw controls that Photopea allows you to use. Let's switch to Photoshop for a moment, and I show you that, opening this same DNG. You see that there are a series of settings and adjustments performed. That Photopea is neither able to read nor render. You can solve this problem in 2 ways. The first is to use these rudimentary controls to give a rough fix to this image and press open. The second solution is to use an external editor for raw development. It can be Luminar, which you have mentioned several times. It can be Lightroom, but it can also be, for example, Raw Therapy, which is completely free. I have already told you about it here on the channel, and the video is linked in the description below and in the card above my head. In that case, you would come up with a situation like this here. But that's not what we're going to do, because we're going to go completely by hand working on this photo. The first thing I would do is improve the contrast slightly, and we can do it with curves. Let's darken the shadows a bit, gain some contrast in the highlights. I don't want the whites to run away so much at the top, and then we can do something like this here, known as the Photopea interface, extremely similar to that of Photoshop. You have seen that below the buttons are identical. A little different is this part that you can also leave completely open if you want by pressing the 2 arrows. I am more comfortable with this way, which is also the way I use in Photoshop. Pro stands for properties. Now let's not worry too much about exactly replicating the workflow we had used and go ahead. You will see that we will arrive at the result extremely similar to what we have already obtained. At this point we must rotate the image inside the sphere. We do just pressing the mouse on the rectangular marquee tool and select the elliptical marquee. I prefer to start drawing it from the center. To do this, you have to press Alt on the keyboard. This is a sphere and consequently we also have to hold down Shift. So we have a circular selection. Let's start tracing it. And you see I didn't start exactly from the center. Consequently, we should work a little by eye. Here I show you the first of the differences we have with Photoshop. Because in Photoshop when I go to get the elliptical selection tool, which is done exactly the same way, as you can see, I position myself in the center and press Alt and Shift on the keyboard. Here too I didn't hit the center, but, by pressing the spacebar, I can move my selection as it is, and make it smaller for example. That is what I would like to do. Never giving up the selection tool. I made the selection I needed. In Photopea we can't do that, but we still got very close to this result. You see, the selection is a wee bit bigger than what we will need. And here you have two solutions. Start over, or go to Selection, Edit, Contract, and for example to decrease it I think of about 15 pixels. At this point we can center it a little better, and I tell you that 15 pixels were few and therefore edit, contract, and let's do another 15 pixels. Now that we have our selection and have it correctly positioned concentric to our sphere, let's go back to the selection menu. Go to Edit and blur it. I would say to blur it by at least 20 pixels. And what we have to do now is copy the content of this selection, incorporating both levels, so Ctrl Shift and C. At this point we have to paste it on a new layer and in the same position. This is done with Ctrl Shift and V. Look what happened. We have a new layer that seems to do absolutely nothing. But see, it's just our faded image. At this point we don't have to do other than pressing Ctrl T on the keyboard, which is the same thing as going to Edit and pressing Free Transform. Now here it says Ctrl Alt T, but Ctrl T worked as well. We press Shift on the keyboard to move in 30-degree intervals. And there we go, we just have to rotate our image. You see that down here the operation is a little strange. And so Ctrl T again. And here there is another difference compared to Photoshop, because you see, in this moment, if I don't hold down the Shift key, I can freely deform it, while instead in the latest versions of Photoshop, this happens the other way around. In any case, just press Shift. Here, we magnify it very slightly. I would move it slightly, using the arrow keys. And here we have adjusted our crystal ball. Now to arrive at our result that more or less this here. We have to intervene in this part below. To do it, we position ourselves here on the level of the curves, so that what we are going to do will influence what we find below. The first thing I would do is add the photo filter. We're already pretty lucky with color. I'd move it a little more towards brown. And maybe I would increase the intensity a little bit. Of course, the green here in the leaves is a little different. But the other thing we can do to further improve the look is to add a new level of curves and do this operation here. i.e. raise the blacks a little to make them a bit more similar. And probably lower the shadows a bit. And we can do the same thing here on whites too. The other control we need is a saturation control. So let's go to vibrance, which is not translated into Italian. Here instead it is translated into vibration. In short, the translation is certainly not perfect. Let's lower the saturation a little and raise the vibrance heavily. The last thing I would do is intervene a little in here. And I would do it again with the curves. But we want them to intervene only on the layer below. To do this, we have to click while holding down Alt on the layer, and see this little arrow appears, which allows this control of curves C to intervene only inside the sphere. What I would like to do is increase the contrast a bit, and improve a little the shadow visibility. And this would be our finished result. I remind you that this is the result we wanted to achieve. We are still a bit far away. The last thing I would do is a dodge or burn. I prefer to do the dodge and burn in this way. Shift F5 to fill. We will use gray. You see, that doesn't sound like a great idea, but just set the blending mode to overlay. And at this point here, taking a brush, pressing B on the keyboard if you want to do it from the keyboard, or else selecting the tool here from the palette. Alt key to choose the size, moving right left, and above below to choose the softness. I would like a large and very soft brush, and I would like a rather low flow. Let's say at most 10%, so something less is better. Right now I'm painting with black. I would like to darken this area. Press X on the keyboard to invert the foreground and background and take white, because you saw that here everything was shot. Well, we can easily do it even if in reality we liked it better in this way. Again X on the keyboard to get black, because I would like to darken this side a bit and especially the hand. Now I realize I'm not doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing to make her look like it, but at this moment I like this photo better done this way. And it was an excuse to show you the dodge and burn. You see, this is our photo as it was, and this is the dodge and burn that we applied. Have you seen how with a 12 megapixel image and a brush of this generous size, you start to create slowdowns in Photopea, which doesn't actually happen in Photoshop? But let me know in the comments below if you think this kind of inconvenience could be worth it, the Adobe product subscription. Because so many other differences for simple tasks like the one I'm showing you. With Photoshop there is none. Once we have finished our work, we can save it in PSD. You see, save as PSD. And in this case what will happen is that a copy made in PSD will be downloaded to our download directory. I can open it with Photoshop. Note how practically everything we have created in Photopea is reported perfectly. However, the other thing I can do is to export this image in the format I prefer. We have the most common ones used both on the web and also on the printed paper. And a series of other formats a little less common, but still comfortable. In particular, I point out the TIFF. Maybe we just want a JPEG. And we immediately access the settings of this format, so we can rescale the image, optimize the quality, and when we are satisfied with our own, save it. You see, the image is downloaded again to your computer, as you would any other file downloaded from the internet. Overall, I find that Photopea is a really nice alternative to Photoshop. Extremely usable even in a professional context. Certainly not one of intense work, because Photoshop certainly has more advanced performance and functions. But if you have to manage a social network, and maybe create some images or some post for one of your customers, is not impossible. Indeed, it is quite simple to make it with this software. It also looks like an excellent complement to the Luminar to me. The operation we just performed on this image, which is to turn the image inside the sphere, in Luminar was not impossible, but it was an absolute nightmare. And so, the possibility of having a free tool like this seems to me that makes it an extremely suitable complement. I have already dedicated many tutorials to Luminar. If you don't know this software, I suggest you to try it. And if you want to buy it, don't forget the Video Zappo coupon to save a little money. But here I'll link you to the playlist with all the video that I dedicated to the latest version of Luminar. Click to watch it. In the meantime, thank you for watching this video. But above all, remember, never stop learning. See you in the next video.